All right, Secretary, I appreciate you making the time for this interview. We're getting towards the end of the year. I think our first question is, when you're looking back at 2025, what are you most proud of?
Well, I think we've had a great year in economic development in the state of North Carolina, and under Governor Josh Stein's leadership, we've broken records for jobs announced for the state, 34,000 new jobs, $23 billion in investment. We've won awards, the best state for business in America from CNBC, the third time in 4 years that we won that award. And I think we've delivered on the promise that we made to create great jobs in every corner of the state. When you look at where our economic development has been, sure, we've had some very good projects in the Triangle, we've had some good projects in Triad and Charlotte, but we've also had great projects in rural Eastern North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and all places in between. So we're proud of that.
Yeah. Anything you feel like you could have done better?
Always. I think the most important thing we think about in economic development is this aspect of combining great workforce, training, and talent with great places that have good infrastructure, and then the partnerships that we have between local economic developers and the state and federal. And so when I think about what we need to do better, workforce comes to mind first. I think we've got a great workforce, one of the most talented in all of America, and yet we have to be better. We've got to align our workforce programs that we run through the Department of Commerce with those that go at the community college, the university level, up and down the chain so that they are aligned with our economic development goals. We've got to have a workforce that's ready on day one for all of these jobs that we've announced. So that's why the Governor's Council on Workforce and Apprenticeships has set 11 strategic goals that we have to meet in the next 4 years. These are time limited, they're quantifiable. If we don't meet them, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, one of the probably biggest successes, I'd say, would be that Jet Zero announcement. I think one of the interesting parts is that they've yet to make an aircraft that has gotten off the ground. So when you guys are looking into a company like that is so advanced and innovative, how do you kind of weigh what you've seen from them with kind of the incentives packages that you
Sure.
come up with?
Great question. So in economic development, what we're trying to do is find credible projects that are going to create real value and impact in the areas where they go. Jet Zero is a new company. They're designing a blended wing body aircraft. That's not a new design tactic or new design feature in aircraft, but it is new for the commercial aircraft space. Now it's going to have dual use applications both in commercial and defense. And so one of the things that we looked for with Jet Zero was the vote of confidence that had come from the federal government. You and I talked before at a previous jobs announcement about what it means to have the federal government be invested in one of these projects. Well, the federal government's invested in Jet Zero's project to the tune of $250 million. It's not the only thing that we look at, but it's one of those things when you're trying to evaluate a younger company that's making a big bet on scaling. Who else has helped you in verifying their bona fides? The federal government, other investors, and really the quality of the financing for that project convinced us this is the right thing to do. And it also convinced us that our partners at Piedmont Triad International Airport were on board with this project right away because they felt like they had evaluated the company fairly and that it would be impactful in that region.
Yeah, and you mentioned the idea of getting the federal government involved, like we spoke at that jobs announcement. A number of expansions of companies in the defense sector, including some that are backed by the Pentagon. I mean, do you see that as an area of potential growth in the state going into 26?
We absolutely do. One thing that's hard to predict sometimes is what's going to be the priority of the federal government. Over the past couple of years, it's probably been a little more aligned towards federal support for clean energy. I think the current administration has less of a priority there. But I think it's fair to assume that both our government and also allied governments around the world are invested in new defense technology. There's probably not a place in the United States that's better suited to help grow and scale defense technology companies than the state of North Carolina, between all of our defense assets, Special Forces Command down at Bragg, and the research capabilities that we have in the center of the state. You combine all of these things with the ability to scale projects like the Vulcan Elements project in Benson in Johnston County. And so that Vulcan Elements project is a great example. It's not strictly thought of as a defense project, but it is a national security project to produce those rare earth magnets in the United States and build a supply chain here that's durable against the changes that might come in the world. That's a project that started at the Department of Commerce when they were a very young company and came to us seeking some very, very small grant funding to help them grow their technology. We helped support them with a 1NC small business grant. And just a couple years later, they're ready to scale also in North Carolina. So that idea of germinating the idea all the way through to scale, that's really what we want to have here in North Carolina. We think we can do it in defense technology, but that's not the only place we want to work.
Yeah. Two companies that we just talked about that are pretty innovative, pretty new as well, but there are some heavy hitters that we've had come here, namely Apple, VinFast, another one. What's the status of their developments in our area? I mean, is there any update about where they stand?
Sure. So we'll start with Apple, and Apple continues to add people to their facility out in RTP. I think they've got upwards of 600 plus and more than 1,600 statewide employees. And so when we talk about a project that adds 600 high-paid employees to the region is a really good project. The scope and scale of their ambition is much larger, and that's the project that we have helped them to support over time. As you noted, the Economic Investment Committee approved a couple of weeks ago the ability for Apple to have a couple of additional years on their performance. These are all performance-based incentives that we have for every company in North Carolina. And so given the fact that they've already created these jobs, General Assembly granted us that authority, and then the EIC went and unanimously granted them a couple more years so that they can continue to grow and build more in the Triangle and in RTP specifically. VinFast is on a site out in Chatham County. We continue to work with them to understand their timeline. We want to make sure that that site and the state's investment in that site yield the most impactful jobs for Chatham County and for this entire region. And so we want to make sure whatever we do, that we're working with them to understand their process, timeline, and that ultimately we're going to do the best thing for the taxpayers.
Is your confidence the same with VinFast that they are committed?
Yeah, nothing's changed in the state's approach to VinFast thus far.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of the General Assembly making those changes to extend some of those deadlines. I know that happened with Apple. Is that something, a practice that you agree with, and do you see exercising that more in the future for other companies?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that for all of the political rancor that one might hear in North Carolina, there is really no daylight between the administration and the General Assembly on economic development. We really work hand in glove with them because economic development to us is not a red issue or a blue issue, it's a green issue. It's about creating jobs and prosperity all across the state. And so whether it's on this issue or anything else, we tend to work very closely with them to understand what their priorities are, the priorities of the members of the General Assembly, how the Department of Commerce can help fulfill the missions that they see and support Governor Stein's ambitions around economic development, and we're usually very closely aligned.
Yeah. When it comes to those incentives packages, I think we hear from people that they may not entirely agree with it. They may not fully understand it, but they don't agree maybe with the idea of handing out money to these large billion-dollar corporations. I mean, what would happen if the state decided to just stop these incentives? I mean, what would that do for North Carolina?
It's important to understand what they are. So the state's largest incentive program, the Job Development Investment Grant Program, provides usually a cash-based grant to a company that's creating jobs over a period of about 12 years. These are all performance-based grants, so nobody gets a dime from taxpayers until they prove they've done the things they said they were going to do. Create the number of jobs they said they were going to create, pay wages at or above the rate that they said they were going to pay, and invest capital at or above the rate they said they were going to invest. And if they don't do those things, we don't pay out any money to them. So the taxpayers are protected from a company that perhaps isn't able to fulfill that ambition just because of market forces over time. Your question, what happens if they go away? I think we're a lot less competitive. All of these grants are considered but for this grant, do we think this competitive project would choose North Carolina for an investment or choose a competitor state? And all of those competitor states are offering incentives of their own, and some are much, much larger than the ones we offer in the state of North Carolina. What North Carolina is able to offer is that great workforce, talent, great locations, communities for them to locate, and the incentives are an added benefit, certainly.
Yeah, those kinds of incentives, I mean, is that what makes North Carolina that kind of top 3 state that we've been the last, I think you said 5 years?
It's part of the recipe. It's an ingredient in what we do. Yeah. When you look at that measurement of why we're the best state for business 3 of the last 4 years, and mind you, you win that award once, might be a flash in the pan, twice you're doing pretty well. 3 out of the last 4, I think we're really on to a formula that works. And the formula that works is really about community development, infrastructure, workforce, and yes, sometimes the providing incentives that help companies to grow and expand their operations in North Carolina.
Going back a couple of questions when you mentioned things about green energy and kind of the push-pull with the current presidential administration. VinFast has said in the past that its success would be dependent on those tax credits. Knowing that President Trump had ended those, is that a company that can grow here if those tax credits aren't available?
I think they're hoping to continue to grow here and sell more cars. They're already selling cars. There's some that we see out on the road, one down in the garage under the Commerce building right now. So look, I think electric vehicles continue to be very popular, not just in the United States, but around the world. Not every model is popular. We know Ford's pulled back a little bit on their EV ambitions. And certainly that tax credit is a difference maker for consumers. But if you look at the rest of the world, they're transitioning to EVs. I think engineering around EVs is getting better, and those are continuing to be a growth in the market.
Yeah. Other than VinFast, are there any other planned North Carolina expansions that were upended by the loss of those clean energy tax credits or similar federal incentives?
Yeah, Natron Energy was a company that we had helped support with a project that they intended to bring to the Kingsborough site in Edgecombe County. This was going to be a project creating batteries not for vehicles, but really for industrial applications. And Natron folded basically because of the failure of federal support for that program that was expected under the previous administration but did not materialize in this current administration.
Yeah. When you're talking about the federal government backing, in talking with Jack as well, he's educated me a lot on this, but, best kind of security a company could have in years past, but, we've seen, the withdrawal of, CHIPS Act funds and how that impacted Wolfspeed and, the day-to-day changes from the Trump administration on certain federal funds like this. This week, federal government terminating $285 million in funds for the Smart USA Institute. How does that change the calculus of corporate recruitment in the state, knowing that the federal government funding may or may not be there?
Well, I think the most important thing we need to have in the economy and in economic development is stability and predictability to the degree we can have it, and that includes stability and predictability at the federal level. So the challenge for us is when we find that the administration is creating somewhat of an unstable environment, we can't quite predict where they're going to go, the first thing the state needs to do is make sure that we are a pretty stable place for investment to come, and that's been part of the reason we've been successful, is that I do think companies look at North Carolina and say, I don't know if I can predict what the feds are going to do or what the global market is going to do, but I know what North Carolina is going to do. When North Carolina says they're going to help us with this investment, help us create great jobs, they mean what they say and they follow through. From the federal side, I think it means for us that we need to be diversified in the type of projects we're pursuing. So that's different sectors, different sizes of projects, different sources of financing. As much as we can do it, we want to find projects that have all of those elements, and we feel comfortable and confident that they can move forward with the job creation commitments that they've made.
Yeah. The new economic development strategies, you spent time across the state trying to get input on that to try to develop what that strategy would be. What were some common themes that you heard from businesses, people across the state on how that should be reflected?
I'm glad you asked that. So this is our statewide economic development strategic plan, which we will produce in the early part of next year. And we went to all 8 prosperity zones, as regions within the state of North Carolina, to do listening sessions with the community. It was an open session. Come say whatever you want about what you think is important for economic growth and economic development in the state. Some common themes, and we pulled these out over time, is that people were less interested in the common themes of economic development we talk about a lot. They were less interested in site development. They were less interested in maybe even a more discrete way in workforce programs. What they really cared about was community development. So they cared about housing, they cared about affordability, they cared about child care access, they cared about infrastructure and transportation. They want to have communities that are livable and affordable and are going to both foster growth amongst their population that's already there and attract growth from outside. And so to the degree that our department, with our partners, can go out and support that type of community development, we do. And a great place we do this is through our Rural Economic Development Division, which is focused on just that type of community development.
Yeah, what does that reflect about the state?
I think it's a fast-growing state, but I think we are a microcosm of everything you see in the U.S. You go around the U.S. and ask, is there a housing shortage? The answer is yes, and that's true in urban, suburban, and rural communities. So addressing things like housing, addressing things like access to child care, which the governor's doing through his task force on child care, these are our priorities because great communities are going to foster great economic development.
And then maybe it was 2-3 weeks ago, we got the press release about this being the best year for jobs. 30,000 jobs announced.
34,000.
34. Thank you for correcting me. Don't want to leave any out. But what does the pipeline look for 2026 after such a prosperous year?
It's still pretty good. We're excited about what's in our pipeline. So we work with the Economic Development Partnership. They're our front door, our marketing and recruiting arm here at the Department of Commerce. And our projects continue to look very strong, a mix of things like life sciences, advanced manufacturing, even some office projects. We went for about 5 years after COVID and didn't do any office projects, and this year we brought back office projects in a big way. That diversity of options really is healthy for our state. It says to us that the economy and actors in the economy are looking to invest in a range of different sectors and in different geographies across the state.
So what keeps you up at night when you're thinking about 26 or what you've dealt with in 25?
Always our talent, always our workforce. I think we have the most talented, hardworking people in all of the United States. And I also think for North Carolina to remain competitive, we have to invest in that talent from cradle to career. We've got to have access to early childhood education. It's great for kids, it's great for parents, it's great for employers. But then we've got to have people that are job ready. One of the things I'm most excited about is a federal government change that I want to champion here, which is the creation of Workforce Pell. So it's the Pell Grant program, which has traditionally been for university college education or community college associate degree education. Now you can use Pell for short-term training operations, things that you might go to a community college to get a certification so you can go work in a great advanced manufacturing job. Making that more accessible to more people is removing burdens from people getting great training and great careers and ultimately building prosperity for themselves and their community. But we're a fast-growing state with a lot of opportunity. We've got to have a workforce that's ready. We've got to align our resources to be responsive to that, and ensuring we have those resources as resources decline from the federal government. That's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Is there any part of the state that you see that need more apparent?
Need more.
The need for, resources in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at our tiers map, for example, we know where the most distressed counties are. The northeastern part of the state, where I'm from, is one of the more distressed regions of the state. We've got to make more investment in those communities, in workforce programs, and in infrastructure so that they can grow organically. And similarly, it has been a priority of ours since day one to help Western North Carolina recover from Hurricane Helene, the worst natural disaster in our state's history. And so just coming from a meeting with the governor on Helene and our progress there, he is very impatient with us to make sure that our recovery is moving swiftly. But part of that recovery for the Department of Commerce is investing in those things like housing, investing in things like infrastructure, and in economic recovery. So think about the Northeast, think about the West. Those are the regions that I think need the most help from the state right now.
Looking forward, we're about 2 weeks from the new year. I mean, any bold predictions for what to expect for 2026 from the Department of Commerce?
I think you're going to continue to see great jobs going to every corner of the state. Our priority and mission on spreading those opportunities outside of the core urban bubbles of the state is important. We think Raleigh's going to get a lot of opportunity, Durham's going to get a lot of opportunity, but so are places like Wilson, Edgecombe, and Nash County. So I predict you'll see more of those projects coming. I think you'll see more life sciences projects coming. I was just overseas with the governor. We were in Japan. We heard other southeastern U.S. states that were with us make their pitch to those investors. What they say is kind of the same thing all the time. Hey, we've got nice weather, we've got good land, we got low cost. What they don't say is the thing that we say. We have 5 top-tier R1 research universities. We have 58 community colleges, and we can do things that are harder, like make life-saving therapies. So I think you'll see more of that in our pipeline.
After a record-breaking year, will we have more than 34,000 jobs added next year?
I'm not ready to make that prediction, but I think we'll have a strong year next year.
Yeah, that's good. More of a current topic, but the announcement of the Lumbee tribe being federally recognized today. How do you see that impacting economic development in that part of the state?
That's a good question. I don't know that we've had an opportunity to dig into it, but we'll work with them if they've got ambitions, just like every other location, to grow. We want to support them in being able to do that, and we already have good relationships with the other 2 federally recognized tribes in the state to help with their economic development.
Perfect. I think that's all I got. Is there anything that you were hoping to chat about that I didn't bring up? Any news you want to break that I didn't have a question about?
We talked about the economic development stuff. I will hit on the Helene recovery just for a moment, because it is something that we're both proud of, but recognize we have a great deal more to do. And this is another place where we broke records. The governor created a new division at Commerce at the beginning of the year, a division of community revitalization, which is responsible for the large HUD grant for recovery. It's a $1.5 billion grant, mostly focused on housing, but also on infrastructure and economic recovery. And we were the fastest state in the country in 10 years to get our program up and running. We have already begun construction on homes. Seeing people get home again is really one of the most satisfying parts of this job, but it also is a reminder of how many people we still need to help get back in their homes, because when they're back in their homes, they can start their recovery, their neighborhoods start recovering, their communities start recovering. It's really the key to what we're doing.